here's Jim. Plus the cameras are all. Ready? Okay.
Just here and there?
Yeah, just
okay,
to
Oh, just to kind of pan around.
Welcome, everybody. Get used to these faces because we're going to be with each other for a long time. All right? Because after this Supreme Court decision, we've made one conclusion, and one conclusion for sure. It's not up to the government to change the way, it's up to the people to change the way and change the laws of this country so that the rule of law works in tandem with equality under the law. If there's no equality under the law, then the rule of law becomes oppressive and against our values of human dignity and freedom and liberty and justice for all. So, with that, we have a great lineup of speakers. I'm going to ask Rabbi Neil Comas-Daniels to kick it off. He's with Temple Beth Shir Shalom.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Been here before. Proud to be back again. Wish it wasn't necessary. Arami Oved Avi, my father was a wandering Aramean. My father came from the Middle East. Both of our fathers came from the Middle East. No one had the right to judge that journey then. No one has the right to judge this journey now. Those who feel that they need to flee violence, oppression, economic turmoil, those people need to be free to come to a place that welcomes them with open arms. We, as a people, as a Jewish people, understand that so well. We've been strangers in lands all over the world, and we were always looking for someone to be kind, to be embracing, to be warm. That's what this country is supposed to be. That's what we are supposed to be. We're not just told it to be nice, we're told it because we have to. We're mandated. I'm going to tell you honestly, I don't want to be here. I have to be here. And that's a difference. I have to be here because this has to stop. Putting up your hand at the border and saying to people, you can't come in because I don't like you, is not America. Putting up your hand at the border and saying to people, you can't come in because I don't like you, is not a spiritual response. This is not about politics. This is not about economics. This is about our humanity. And it's gone. And we will get it back. We will get it back. Shalom Aleinu, Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Yavo Shalom Aleinu, De'al Kulam. Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Yavo Shalom Aleinu, De'al Kulam. Salam Aleinu. Salam, 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 aleinu ve'achol ha'olam, salam, salam. One love, one heart, let's get together, feel alright. One love, one heart, we're all together and feel alright. Salam, aleinu ve'achol ha'olam. Salam, 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 aleinu ve'achol
feel all right.
Thank you, Neil. Beautiful. That's a way to start off. Now I want to introduce a man who has represented our legacy for civil rights here in Los Angeles, a man who stood by Martin Luther King from the beginning, and a woman who is beginning a new legacy for civil rights, who was arrested the other day for committing an act of civil disobedience for those who are underprivileged, which is the meaning of all of our faiths. Please welcome Reverend Jim Lawson and Pastor Sandy Olewine.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here in front of this Islamic Center again. So many things I could say, but I'll try to be very brief. First of all, let me say to you that on May 18th, 1896, the Supreme Court said that the Constitution would permit segregated sports, segregated education. Segregation based on race was constitutional. This is the same Supreme Court. Remember that. So these two decisions this week by the Supreme Court is what, in fact, the people who are grouped around Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions have wanted for a long time. They did not like the fact that in the mid-20th century, part of the strategy of our movement, the Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks movement, Thurgood Marshall movement, went to the court system and got Supreme Courts with unanimous decisions to declare segregation illegal and unconstitutional, and later declared that the Constitution was inclusive of all the residents of the nation. Now, William Buckley, a name that you don't know, and George Will, and James Eastland, James Bilbo of the Mississippi Senators of my life. Percent of the people of the 13 colonies voted for George Washington. We need to understand that what we're facing here is, again, the struggle from the great notion that started this country. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal. That all are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was a phenomenal moment of Allah, a phenomenal moment of God in human history. No other people in the world have ever declared up to that time that our coming together for self-government is in fact a responsibility of our gift of life. That's what this fight is about. And all of us here understand that that must be an inclusive fight. No human being is illegal in the sight of creation. No human being is unwanted or undocumented in the sight of God. We must push that argument in this nation, because it is still true that if I'm not a human being, then you're not a human being. And many of the folk in Congress, especially the white men of Congress, do not recognize the fact that because of their hard-line white Western superiority mood, this nation is very fragile in the long reach of history. It's essential that we, the American people, we, the people of the USA, must take responsibility for reshaping the thinking of Congress and the President and big business alike. Because under God, unless we reverse this Supreme Court, this experiment in democracy could be fatal. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Amen.
28 years ago, I began as associate pastor of this man here to my right. He was the first one to bring me to this building when we first started the Interfaith Coalition against the Gulf War so many, many years ago. I count it a privilege to have him as mentor, as colleague, and friend. As Salam said, this is the second time this week I have been compelled as a follower of Jesus and a citizen of the United States to stand up and speak out about the spirit that has gripped our nation. It is not the spirit of God, but rather a spirit of oppression, a spirit of injustice, and a spirit of wickedness. This spirit seeks to dehumanize families fleeing for their lives, seeking safety from violence and violent-torn nations, ripping children out of their arms of their parents, numbering them like cattle, and callously sending them hither and yon with no plan for how to reunite those families. Men and women and children are described as animals and seen as somehow unworthy of compassion or care. And this spirit is unworthy of us as a nation, and it mocks the core of religious convictions that call us to care for our neighbors and all as God's precious children. That same spirit seeks to dehumanize those in our nation and around the world who know God through Islam, blanketly labeling Muslims as threat to national security, closing our borders to those who wish to visit, work, teach, or immigrate here. This travel ban also separates families, and for those living in war-torn countries says loud and clear, we do not care about your suffering. You are not wanted here. The Supreme Court decision to uphold the ban ignored all of the racial and inflammatory tweets of the president, which highlighted that this ban has little to do with national security and rather is rooted in bigotry, ignorance, and hatred. It gives cover to those who cry that Muslims cannot be Americans. And like the court before them that upheld the internment of Japanese Americans was legal, this ruling subverts both the value we proclaim as a nation and ultimately the Constitution. My baptismal vows as a follower of Jesus says I will resist such powers and principalities, and so I stand here today as a Christian pastor and a U.S. citizen to proclaim that I have zero tolerance for bigotry, zero tolerance for hatred, zero tolerance for racism, zero tolerance for racial and religious intolerance. I have zero tolerance for hate, Mr. Sessions and President Trump. I stand here today to say that the Supreme Court's ruling is a travesty, and that I and my congregation stand with you here at the Islamic Center to fight this unjust ban, to fight for you and with you, and if necessary to stand in front of you to protect you. And you will not stand here alone. The Spirit of God is a spirit of compassion, a spirit of justice, and a spirit of love. This is the spirit which will stand. This is the spirit which will help us to resist And ultimately, this is the spirit that will overcome. So to God be the glory as we walk hand in hand towards freedom, unity, diversity, and community.
Thank you, Sandra. You know, the Supreme Court officially rescinded korematsu just this week at the same time that they approved the Muslim ban. And Justice Sonia Sotomayor commented on that. She said, as part of the dissent, a reasonable observer would conclude that the proclamation was motivated by anti-Muslim animus. The majority holds otherwise by ignoring the facts, misconstruing our legal precedent, and turning a blind eye to the pain and suffering the proclamation inflicts upon countless families and individuals, many of whom are United States citizens. And she goes on to say, in the intervening years since korematsu, our nation has done much to leave its sordid legacy behind. Today, the court takes the important step of finally overruling korematsu, denouncing it as gravely wrong the day it was decided. This formal repudiation of a shameful president is laudable and long overdue, but it does not make the majority's decision here acceptable or right. By blindly accepting the government's misguided invitation to sanction a discriminatory policy motivated by animosity toward a disfavored group, all in the name of a superficial claim of national security, the court redeploys the same dangerous logic underlying korematsu and merely replaces one gravely wrong decision with another. This is our korematsu right now, and we will work to change the conditions of the people so that we can change the law of the land. With that, I want to welcome our friend, our colleague, our brother from the Nikkei for Civil Rights and Redress that worked to overturn korematsu all these years, Mark Masaoka.
We stand wholeheartedly with the Islamic community. After September 11th, we first started working with MPAC and other Islamic organizations in holding Break the Fast at Ramadan. And that solidarity is very important because we want all generations to understand that what happened then should never happen again.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And another organization that has worked to defend our Constitution, as we now are going to celebrate 242 years after the Declaration of Independence. But I wonder how many Americans have actually read the Declaration of Independence as they go to their barbecues this coming Wednesday. How many Americans have actually understood the words of the Declaration of Independence as we move towards celebrating liberty and justice for all? We know that the words in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, are just words unless people like you and us work to defend those principles. And the groups that have defended the most are those from the ACLU. I have the privilege of announcing a former board member of the ACLU, now with the ICUJP, the Interfaith Community United for Justice and Peace, Steve Rodie.
Thank you. This country was built with a challenge. We adopted lofty words. We adopted great principles. We invoked great ideals. But all too often we have faltered, we have stumbled, we have failed to live up to those ideals and live those values. This country was built, in reality, on separating children from their families. We separated the children of Native Americans when we exploited this land. We separated children from their families when we invoked the terrible institution of slavery. We've separated children from their families in unjust and untold ways over the generations. We have so much to be held accountable for. And we've had dark chapters in the history of the United States. And the only way we have come through those dark chapters, and those dark chapters have included times when racist Supreme Court justices were able to announce what they consider the law to be. But there's law and then there's justice. And we're going to weather this storm if we remember that the first three words of the U.S. Constitution is "we the people." It doesn't say "we the Supreme Court." It doesn't say "we the President." It doesn't say "we the Congress." It says "we the people." And in these dark moments, you are exactly where you should be today. And tomorrow, you should be in downtown Los Angeles or West Hollywood or Pasadena or Riverside or wherever people of like mind are gathering to stand up to this authoritarianism that is spreading our country. Great words have been spoken here, and I only want to add a few final ones, because I was moved by the invocation of the words of Emma Lazarus at the Statue of Liberty. Listen, please. We often quote only part of it, but as I finish, listen to each word and each phrase of that poem, The New Colossus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning. And her name, Mother of Exiles. Mother of Exiles. With her beacon held glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Quote, "Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp," cries she with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my light beside the golden door."
Thank you, Steve. Next we have Randy Dobbs from the Baha'i Unity Center.
Thank you. I just want to say that we need to overcome thoughts and expressions of hatred with even more powerful thoughts and expressions of love. We need to bring unity back to the United States. For all those...
No, go ahead.
For all those who are gathered here or who are watching on television, please do what you can to bring peace to this troubled land. America is being torn apart by hatred.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Randy. And there's definitely an intersectionality between the issue of homelessness in our society, the treatment of migrant families at the border, the treatment of the undocumented, and now the treatment of refugees. We are all in this together, and we can only do this together to make the change in our country. We cannot do it separately. We cannot do it alone. We need each other. Let us have this covenant today as we stand before this house of God, that we will protect one another and we will protect life in the name of God. And with that, since the rally is going to be at City Hall tomorrow, I want to ask Daniel Tam, who is the representative for the Interfaith Communities, for Mayor Eric Garcetti.
Thank you, Salam. Hi, everybody. So, on behalf of Mayor Garcetti, I stand here with you in solidarity as Mayor Garcetti stands with all Angelenos whose human rights may be threatened. This is the 70th anniversary of the signing of the Human Rights Declaration, which is coming up on the celebration of International Peace Day on September 21st in 2018. So let's be mindful of that and how human rights resonates for each of us and is essential to our life in democracy, a thriving democracy. Very briefly, earlier this month, there was a primary victory on the East Coast of a young woman who had defeated an incumbent elected official. And her platform, you could say, skewed toward supporting the common good. You could definitely say that. And her reaction was, she was flabbergasted. But when she came out of that wordless state, her first words were, "There's nothing revolutionary about moral clarity in 2018. So let's take that as the watchword, as our motto, moving forward in 2018 and whatever else might be happening in 2018. And thank you, Reverend Lawson, for reminding us of our unalienable rights, that there's nothing revolutionary or radical about moral clarity in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Another partner organization with the Islamic Center and with the Muslim Public Affairs Council is ICAR, and representing ICAR today is Brooke Wershafter.
I'm here today on behalf of ICAR, a Jewish community here in Mid-City. We're partners with many of the organizations that are here, with Ben the Ark and with TRUA, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, also working closely with MPAC and with the Mayor's Interfaith Council. And we're here today, and I'm sorry Rabbi Sharon Brous, our rabbi, can't be here. She's out of the country. But she would be, if she were here, I know that what she would say is that we stand together with our Muslim brothers and sisters. When this kind of thing happens in this country, the one thing that we know that we need to do is to embrace one another and to stand side by side with each other. And we are here today, ICAR, but the whole Jewish community is here to say, we stand with you, we see you, and we want to embrace you in our arms of love, and we will stand in front of you as this administration and the forces of hatred come for you. We are here with you.
And since we mentioned Ben the Ark, Aryeh Cohen from Ben the Ark.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you. My name is Rabbi Aryeh Cohen. I'm the rabbi in residence for Ben the Ark in Southern California. Ben the Ark is a social justice organization that we try to leverage the power and the resources and the passion of the Jewish community in order to make this country a more just and perfect union. From my tradition, what I take and what I want to bring here today is two things. First, when God revealed God's self on Mount Sinai to the Jewish people, the first thing that God said was, I am the Lord your God, who's taking you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, which means the first and basic thing that God introduced God's self as being is against oppression. God is a God who hates oppression. The second thing I want to bring today is that right after that was the prohibition against idolatry. What is idolatry? Idolatry is saying that God is my God and doesn't care about you. Any God who is only my God and doesn't care about anybody else is an idol. That's what it means, do not create an idol. Do not create a God who looks like you. create a God, who is everybody's God. If we believe in one God, that is everybody's God. Borders that keep people out, whether those borders are on the border of our country or on the borders of our community, just reinforce idolatry. We are standing here with you, as I know that you stand here with us. And as Reverend Lawson said, and has been saying for all these decades before all of us, that my freedom is dependent on your freedom, and your freedom is dependent on my freedom.
Thank you, Ari. So well said. And also articulating our true struggle. We are fighting as a group of religious bodies. We are fighting religious nationalism. Religious nationalism, as Arya said, is idolatry, because it is using religion so that a race becomes superior over other races. It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with power. And God says, submit to God's power so that you treat every human being with equality. And if we are to do that, then our number one struggle, our number one fight as religions today is to fight religious nationalism. That is our plight. That is our commitment to God and to one another. And with that, Rabbi Joel Simons from the Jewish Center for Justice.
There's nothing left to be said that my unbelievably brilliant colleagues have already said before me, but I think the one thing that we are here today is to really show that when people of faith, when people of heart remove the borders from their heart and let their hearts be free and let their hearts speak out, then truly this is going to be a country that was always meant to be. We know that the struggle is long, but we also know from so many brilliant people before us that we must not lose hope, that we must not succumb to this feeling of despair, that we must look forward, we must look to one another, and in moments of loss and in moments of hopelessness, we simply have to turn around to our neighbors and turn around to one another and know that this is the community, that this is the America that will survive. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that we have been inspired by all the speakers, we have one more person who's going to inspire us into action. Religion is not just about preaching. Religion is about doing. You don't just read the Bible. You don't just read the Quran. You just don't read the Torah. You actually act upon what God is telling you to do. So with that, we have from All Saints Church, Antonia Gallardo. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and it's great here to be with you, representing All Saints Pasadena, a community of faith that puts our faith into action. As I was coming here today, I was thinking about what can we tell people to do when people say, what are we going to do in these difficult times? And as I was reflecting upon the scripture from the Gospel of Matthew that we're going to be reflecting upon this Sunday for our worship, there was a sentence that caught my attention, and it says, we are called to be perfect as God is perfect. All of us are called to be perfect as God is perfect. And God's perfection is in love. And especially in these more challenging times, the most challenging form of love is to love those who hate us, those who challenge us, and those who persecute us. And at these times in our country where political forces are attempting to erode the rights of the most vulnerable, women, people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ, and even children, it is harder. It is harder to love those who promote and support those behaviors. And these times when it's hard to love these people who in their fear, their greed, and their thirst for power are closing the borders to our Muslims and Latino brothers and sisters. The God that is perfect is asking us to love them and to pray for them. And we have to do that as hard as it could be. However, we cannot stop there, because following the greatest commandment, that is to love the other, and using the privilege of our own freedom, we are called to stand on our feet and together protest. We are called to elevate our voices for the voiceless. We are called to use the power of our vote to make sure that women, people of color, LGBTQ and the Latino and Muslim communities feel loved in this country that is supposed to welcome them. We, as people of faith, were called to demonstrate our love. As Salam said, not just to read from the scripture, but to demonstrate our love for those who are subject to bias, bigotry, and discrimination in these times, like the Muslim community. And how can we do that? We can do that by writing, by making calls, and meeting with our elected officials, both Democratic and Republicans, and let us know how we feel about what they're doing and voting for. And we do that too by joining protests. Protests where we're demanding laws that are close to our values of equity and human dignity. Let's not just rest in the scripture. Let's take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. I want to read you a statement by Senator Dianne Feinstein, our U.S. Senator. She said, "It is disturbing that the court gave little weight to the president's hateful rhetoric on the campaign trail. He stated he would consider closing mosques. He repeated the widely debunked claim that Muslims were cheering on 9/11. He called for a shutdown of Muslims entering the country until we can figure out what's going on. The president's clear biases against Muslims and Islam that motivated the travel ban in the first place should have been the stronger consideration. While upholding the ban on national security grounds, the opinion also ignores the fact that not one terrorist attack in this country has been committed by a refugee or citizen of the Muslim majority countries targeted by the order. Instead, and these are my words, not the senators, this president went to the country that had and harbored those terrorists and made over $100 billion deals to send more arms for more war that will create more terrorism. That is our policy today. And we are the ones that are standing for peace and justice against terrorism and for human dignity and, for the love of God, human intelligence. So, with that, I'm going to have our young leader, Wasi Mu'min, give a very brief closing. We're going to listen to Neil sing our last song, and then we're all invited to walk inside. Hey, Mike, sorry, just saw you. We're going to walk inside for the sermon, and you're all invited to listen because the sermon will be about the Muslim travel ban.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Our God is a loving God, a merciful God, a benevolent God. In the name of the law today, in the name of the American spirit, in the name of all that is good, in the name of patriotism, our country today is committing the most vile acts, the most undignifying crimes against all that is good and against all that is moral, in the name of the American spirit. I would like to thank you all today, all of you for being here, not only for standing with us today and all of the times that you have stood with us before, and for standing with us and all that will be needed to do in the future. But I would like to thank you for embodying the true spirit of America, our country, our Constitution, and our values. You are those who embody all that is good in this world and all that is good of our nation. The message that Muslim youth may receive is one of that they might not be wanted here, that they might not be welcome, that they are not welcome in this country, that they are not desired, that their passions, that their talents are not ones that we need. You assure us and you tell us, no, you are wanted here and you are America and this is what America believes in. Thank you for being here. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Wasi. Fighting for the American soul, indeed. Very shortly, we're going to have Mike Farrell, our friend, our activist who has worked against the death penalty in this state, and a friend of the Muslim community for decades.
Thank you, Salam. Thank you all for being here. I just wanted to say it's wonderful to hear these words. It's wonderful to see you folks here. I played a doctor on television, and as a doctor, we want to heal people. President Trump needs to be healed. He says he's trying to figure out what's going on. Well, I want to help him. I want to help him understand that what's going on is he has lost connection with the truth. That we used to talk about truth, justice, and the American way. He has lost contact with truth, with justice, and with the American way. What is going on is that his friends are teaching him about Christian superiority, Christian supremacism, white supremacism. He's talking about wealth supremacism. That's not the right word, but it's like that. Okay. And what we need to do is have a little pity on the poor man and help him to understand that what he's looking for is right here. What he's looking for is in the community. What he's looking for are you, the loving people of the United States of America.
All right. We're almost at that time where we have to go inside, and you're welcome to come. And I believe the city attorney, Mike Fuhrer, is also going to speak. Is he confirmed? Okay, I think he is. So we're going to go inside. But before we do, we're going to, after all these jolting talks, we're going to have Neil sing one more song for us to bring us to serenity as we walk into the house of worship.
Small task. This song is about neighbors. I have to say that one of the things that those of us who've been standing on these steps for many, many years, we have an expanded understanding of who our neighbors are. The problem is the people who are leading this country have a very old understanding of what a neighbor is. Somebody's hurting my neighbor, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my neighbor, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't stay quiet anymore. Someone's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't stay quiet anymore. Someone's hurting our children, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting our children, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't stay quiet anymore. Oh, someone's hurting my neighbor. It's gone on far too long. It's gone on far too long. It's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting my neighbor, and it's gone on far too long. And I won't stay quiet anymore.
Thank you, Neil. As we walk into the mosque, remember these words. Well, first of all, something else about the Trump administration. They tend to quote the Bible. But God says, don't put words in God's mouth, especially when you don't know what you're talking about. He says that. Don't lie about God. Let me read you a scripture from the Quran then. O humanity, we have created you from a single pair, a male and a female, and made you into different nations and different tribes so that you may come to know one another, not despise each other. And the best among you, the most honored among you, are those who are conscious of God. with that God consciousness, the message for God consciousness, let us walk into the mosque. You're all welcome. Thank you.